So I will turn the time over to Sue Talley. Sue Talley, I'm excited to hear from her. She's going to highlight what representation women have in the IT industry in today's workplace, and what groups are doing to encourage women to take IT courses. So Sue Talley from Capella, please. Before Sue, I will turn the time over to Kent. There we go.
As he steals my only point in the spotlight. No, we're excited to have Sue Talley with us this morning. Sue is the Dean of Business and Technology at Capella University. Did I get all that right? I'm sorry, I'm close. Don't do business. She does technology. We're excited to have her. My thought started about a year ago as we met with Sue back in Minnesota. She expressed a great passion for diversity in the IT world, which we know it's predominantly male. But we need more spice and more ideas and more opportunity for others to join that particular industry. And Sue has a great energy. She expressed that during the meeting that we had. And as we walked out of the meeting and walked downstairs, got in the elevator, I turned to John Harris and said, I want Sue to present next year. She doesn't know that until now. And so it's been a year-long process, and we're excited. Sue, would you like to come up and please give her a wonderful welcome, and we'll turn the time over to Sue.
Thank you so much. I'm also very happy to be here, and thanks to TestOut for inviting me. Just needed to find my clicker. I went around and introduced myself to many of the women who are here, because usually at a conference like this, it is really predominantly male, often white male. And I think it's important to understand a little bit about why we might want more diversity in IT and the things that all of you can do to help to generate that diversity. Sometimes I think that I know that I accepted for a long time at Capella that most of the students would be male and didn't think too much about it. But I've started to in the last few years, especially as it's become more and more clear that some of the places where IT professionals can do the most and have done the most to change the world, it's primarily males who are doing that now, and we really need to have some integration and diversity. So. I want to get some information about all of you. I'll tell you that Capella is a totally online university. We have about 37,000 students worldwide. We're headquartered in Minneapolis. And I've been at Capella for going on about 8.5 years now. So a long enough time to get to know the online world and a lot about what we can do in that space. I'm curious about some of you. How many of you are from K through 12? Great. That's what I worked on before I came to Capella. I mainly worked in K through 12. How many of you are for community colleges? A lot of community colleges. How many of you are from four-year institutions? Okay. And international, I know that most of the international people I think are probably leaving for their venue. International, okay, fantastic. And now the tougher question, what percentage of females do you have in your courses at your institution? So I'll start with, how many of you have 50% or more females at your institution? One.
At the institution or in a program?
In your program. In the IT, computer science, IS, anything, that part of the program? That's great. We have one who's got 50% or more. How about 30% or more? How many of you you think are at 20%? Okay, and 10%? So 10% to 20% is sort of the usual answer in most institutions, and we're going to go through a little bit about the numbers just to level set. I don't want to spend a lot of time on these, but just to make sure that I know that in the news this year there's been a lot of information about this, but very quickly some of the numbers that might be important. Women took about 19% of the AP tests, 18% of the science degrees, about 27% of women finish master's or PhD. And the reason why, according to, at least to Microsoft, why it matters is that you get a 34% higher return if you're in those fields, and if you're a PhD, you're 40% more likely to be cited. So it's important to begin to add diversity, but most important are the fact that the numbers are so low. The worst part for me is that I hadn't really paid attention to it because I worked at Apple in Silicon Valley in the 80s, and I thought it was really pretty integrated. Unfortunately, it's declined since then. This is from 2001 until now. Now it'd be great if the women were the red bar. Unfortunately, we're the little green stuff at the bottom. And women are declining at about the same rate as men and indicating that they were going to major in this case, it's computing and information sciences. So there's a decline both with men and women, which is not good, but particularly among women, and it's gone down since the 80s. Even worse, and this one is all for women, so the red bar is all women. The 18%, the blue bar, is white women. Asian women are 4%, African Americans 2%, and Hispanics 1.5%. I read the latest news about how Google did its hiring in this last year. They put a big push on to get diversity. They hired one African American woman out of 1,200 positions that they hired for. So the diversity issues reign. They're 4% Latina and 2% African American. Oops, sorry, wrong button. There are some differences in the presence of women in these occupations, and I know you probably can't read all of those names, and I didn't intend you to, but women tend more to the data fields. I gave this presentation at the SAS conference, their global forum, and there are many more women who seem to be migrating into data science. In most of those programs, it's often 30% or higher women. And it goes down to, interestingly, for those of you, especially at the TestOut conference, some of the lower numbers are in software development and network and computer systems. So this came from, by the way, a lot of the last 3 slides came from the National Council on Women in IT. So if any of you are looking for information about what's happening with women in IT, it's a great place to go to. They're also they have great sets of resources. If you're trying to attract more women into your fields, that council is a great council to go to. They have a wonderful website, lots of free resources. And this is, Google, I think, probably started the movement in this last year because they were forced to announce exactly how much diversity they did or didn't have. And in this case, there are 30% women, 70% men. Actually, it's a little bit less than 30%, about 27%. Since I worked at Apple, I have to say that Apple was at 30%, but that's a bad enough number for Apple, I think. And ethnicity is, as I said, 2% African American, 3 to 4% Hispanic, Asian, and then white. So why does it matter? Who cares whether or not there's diversity in what goes on in IT? And there are some great studies that have been done recently about why it really does matter to have all kinds of diversity in the technology decisions that are being made in companies. They perform better financially. the companies perform better financially. There have been quite a few studies. One of the ones here is that 500 US businesses were surveyed. If they had greater race and gender diversity, they had higher sales, more customers, greater market share. A lot of it is that women and persons of color can represent other points of view that are important to understand when you're addressing your customers. And without those additional points of view, the team leading a product development can often miss important features that they need to have to be able to attract the entire audience that should be there for that product. A lot of the women report that they have some problems with the team dynamics, but if you get to greater mixes of women and men, some of those dynamics improve. The women feel less like they have to be geeks and more like they can be themselves in the team. The impact is even greater if we can get women into management, if they feel that if women feel that there's a role model for them, and they see that in a leader in the company, that's very helpful. Teams with more diversity also are more innovative. The most recent studies, 100 teams, 21 companies, 17 countries. Those teams were more experimental, they were more likely to share knowledge amongst each other, and they were more likely to be creative. They were willing to think outside of the box, look at new things, and try different things other than what a less diverse team might have tried. So there is real value in talking about this and in trying to figure out how to go beyond men. There's also a cost of having fewer women. And one of the biggest ones is that we don't have enough people in IT today to fill all the job opportunities. By far, we don't have enough people in security positions. We desperately need more people there. We don't have enough people in the data positions. So there are a lot of positions going wanting, and we have half of the population that isn't being enticed into coming into that world and entering it. And because we're not doing a good job of recruiting, it costs a lot to get the talent. Companies often say that for some of the higher level positions, it can cost them $150,000 to $200,000 just to do the recruiting process. And if they lose that person in a very short period of time, imagine the cost if they have to keep doing that repeatedly. There's another problem that we have to address for women, and that's the attrition of women after they do come into the field. For a long time, companies have known that the women who go into IT tend to leave somewhere in the 3 to 6 year period of time, many of them to go off and have their first child. And after they've thought through it while they're on leave, many of them decide not to go back into IT. They do go back to work, they just don't go back into technology jobs. They tend to go to business jobs where they think they might have a little bit more control over the hours and the time and what they have to do. That's a tough transition period and something that definitely needs to be addressed by companies throughout the world. There are also some social interaction problems. If you read a lot of the blogs, the women will report things like, you don't mind if I call you chick, do you? Or most girls just really aren't into this stuff. Why are you here? Or the one that sounds like it would be okay but really isn't quite okay, let me know how I can help you. I know that most girls really don't know how to do this stuff. So the difficulty is that in many of the teams that women go into, because they are so predominantly male, the males are interacting with each other as they would normally with each other, and sometimes the females feel very left out. A big problem, particularly in places where there may only be 10% of the population who are females. So I'll go with what women don't want. I was amazed when I went out to search for images of women. I'm always pretty lazy in doing PowerPoints because I'm not very good at drawing or graphics, and I wanted to go out and find pictures of women in IT. So besides Grace Hopper, who's almost always out there as a picture of a woman in IT, this was one of the most predominant pictures. So this is the Barbie that goes for women in IT. And the shirt is all zeros and ones. The computer is, of course, pink. And not exactly, I think, what most women who are entering into IT really want is their image of what they're supposed to live up to. And the thing that women say most often is that they feel that the workplace either leaves them out or it forces them to be even geekier than what they really feel they truly want to have as their own image. And a lot of the jokes and the practices are inappropriate in the workplace and are often offensive because of that. Women, though, often like to be geeks. I have a daughter-in-law who definitely likes to be a geek, loves gaming. She happens to like graphic design, so she still is on the creative side, but she definitely wants to be identified as on the geekier side of the spectrum. So with all of that as background, how did I enter into the IT world? And especially since I started off as a high school English teacher, how exactly did I manage to get into this? Or maybe more importantly, why did I do it? Why didn't I stay a high school English teacher? Well, even as a high school English teacher, I had discovered that there were simulations on computers when I was in college. And since I was teaching science fiction in high school, I thought these simulations would be great for my students to use as part of their reading of these science fiction novels. And I wandered into the math lab and discovered that they had these great terminals connected to computers where I could get my students on to use these simulations. And in the process, I realized that nobody expected anybody from the English department to be at all interested in these computers. And I found them fascinating. I loved them. I liked working with them. And after I'd been teaching high school English for a while, during the summer, I was looking for a dining room table to refinish and going through the newspaper, and I discovered instead a job that sounded exactly like what I wanted to do, which was teaching other teachers how to use technology in their classrooms. And I joined a consortium in Minnesota that was doing that, and I was lucky enough to get there just at the time that we were converting from terminals to microcomputers. So Apple computers, and some of you may remember PET computers if you're as old as I am, and Radio Shack computers. I knew I didn't want to have to work on the Radio Shack computers for very long. No offense to those of you from Texas or with ties to that industry, but every time I programmed it onto tape, my program disappeared or bombed or I lost it, and I quickly discovered I wanted something other than that. But I did like programming it, I did like teaching other people about it, and I saw the potential of what technology could do in the learning process. So what most attracted me was really about using technology for teaching and helping other people to learn things. So a combination sort of both of my backgrounds. From there, I went to school, I got my doctoral degree. As always, I skipped over a big piece of it. I went to Apple as the most important piece in there. I worked for 8 years at Apple corporate headquarters, working on trying to figure out how to integrate technology into either K through 12 schools or into universities and colleges. The interesting thing there, yes, I did work with Steve Jobs. No, you didn't want to work with Steve Jobs. I avoided Steve Jobs as much as I possibly could. And yet I was the one who worked on the project to convert schools from Apple IIes when we knew that they were at their end of their life to go to Macintoshes. And so I had to spend a lot of time in the Macintosh building. One of the tricks for me was that Steve insisted that you had to dress casually, so you had to be in jeans and t-shirts or something like that to go to his building. Unfortunately, the corporate sales headquarters where I was really located, the manager, the VP, insisted that we dress in sales dress. So on the days when I had to go back and forth, it was always a challenge to figure out how I was going to go from jean casual to looking like I was going to a sales meeting and dressing in suits. So a little tricky in the wardrobe department there, but I managed to figure it out for several years. After that, after Apple, I went to Pepperdine to help create an online doctoral degree. I'd always really wanted to get my PhD, and I looked around and couldn't find anything that was really appropriate, so I knew that my friends at Pepperdine were interested in creating that, so I went there to create one of the first online doctoral programs in the country so that I could go into it and then graduate from it. So it was a great experience and taught me a lot about what a lot of you have discovered about the joys and value of doing online learning, that for a lot of people, it's their best way to experience things. So my way into IT is sort of backwards. I left Pepperdine eventually because I decided to move back to Minnesota to get married and stay with the guy that I'd been having a long-distance relationship with for a while. And while I was there, I thought, well, I'll just apply for an adjunct job at Capella. I'll teach part-time at Pepperdine and part-time at Capella. And they saw my resume and said, no, we really think you should be a dean. So I didn't quite get the adjunct job, but it's been fun ever since then. So with a totally online environment, it teaches you a lot about having to think through what it takes to really do that. And it did also make me realize that for a lot of women who come into IT, they don't necessarily do it through the normal pathway that a lot of guys have done. So they don't necessarily go through computer science, or they don't necessarily like mathematics or programming. I happen to like both math and programming, but it wasn't really, I knew it wasn't something I wanted to do for my life. And I think that we're always, many of the people that I've met, many of the women I've met, were always looking for some other things that they wanted to do with the technology beyond what you could do in businesses, some of the more creative things, some of the more things that might solve bigger problems for companies or bigger problems for society. The two other faculty chairs, one of my faculty chairs is here, Bill Daphnis, if you want to raise your hand. I have two other faculty chairs who are women. Both of them indicate that even though they became IT professionals eventually, neither of them started off really wanting to go into the field. They also came into it through the back door. Both of them admit that what they really liked, that was probably the indicator that they were going to like IT, is they liked solving puzzles. They liked taking things apart and putting them back together again. They liked thinking through the logic of how to solve a problem. And I think that one of the things we need to look for in women who might be interested in IT is not try to approach it so much as a field of mathematics or programming, and approach it more as a field where we're solving problems. Because most of what everybody does, especially since we're talking about business goals and making sure that what we do in technology actually meets the goals of companies and helps them to solve their problems, this is probably one of the things we need to pay attention to. So Google did a survey when they realized that the findings of their HR and their lack of diversity was going to make a lot of national press. They did a big survey to try to find out what really works in encouraging women to get into technology. And they surveyed a lot of people in lots of different positions around the country to try to find these. And the interesting thing is that now when you read some of the books, I read one yesterday on the plane about women who have made it into IT management positions, they say these same things. One of the things that women need is some social encouragement. They need to be able to see that this is a field that they belong in. And it may have to start at an early age. They need a self-perception that this is something that can fit for them. They need some exposure in the academic world so that they pursue the academics that it takes to go through the field, and they need to understand what careers are available. beyond thinking of, I couldn't figure out why I didn't like the program Silicon Valley, because my husband really did like it, and I realized that I thought it distorted what really happens in the Valley after having lived there for almost 10 years, that I think that more of what the Valley is all about is really people's minds getting together to do creative, new problem-solving kinds of things for the world. The belief in the Valley is that you're out to change the world. One thing about social encouragement is that peers are important. Familial support is important, but actually the parent's occupation itself was not that significant. The parents could have really pretty much any occupation, but as long as they encouraged their female children to at least think about careers in science, math, or technology, it made a huge difference. It also does make a difference, though, that they see some peers who are also interested in it. Self-perception, like I said, an interest in mathematics, and I added or puzzles because I think that it's the puzzle part that may be the piece that we can use more to attract women. A perception of proficiency, curiosity, and problem solving. So they also looked at this, and the females who were familiar with computer science labeled it as the future, fun, interesting, money, challenging, innovative. Females who weren't familiar with computer science but who were asked about it saw it as boring, hard, difficult, computers, math, programming, nerd. So part of it is breaking down the stereotype of what people believe this to be. So I want to, in just a few minutes, open this up to a discussion about what you've seen work in your institution or some of the things that you're trying to do. I think one of the important things, as I've been saying, is that IT does not have to equal mathematics, so that for girls who think that they can't be good at math, I think taking another approach and talking about innovation and problem solving. There are a lot of contests now that are really looking at innovating, inventing something new, working together to try to invent something new, solving a problem that the world you may not know has, but that can be meaningful to kids as they're growing up. And problems that demonstrate how IT can really improve our lives. So many of the women interviewed said that they want some real-world, meaningful context for the problems that they're solving, and they want the problems to really demonstrate that they make a difference in life. What works for recruiting and retention in schools particularly? I think other people are going to speak about this as well, but some of them are creating communities for women to connect with other women. So making sure that they have a chance to form a community and that they can find others like themselves. Provide mentoring opportunities. One of the things I've done at Capella is to work with some of the other women in, not so much in academics, but in IT, some of the younger women, to see what I could do to help them. I decided after a while, though, that I had to stop doing that because I was teaching them to ask questions about what they wanted to do with their lives and what they should do next, and almost all of them left Capella for other jobs where they were getting more money, and I said, I think I'm not going to be able to mentor anymore at Capella. They're going to think that all I do is talk people into leaving. That was not my intent, but as the women got more confident, they looked around to see other things. One of the key things they found is that you have to use language that's gender neutral. And most of us don't realize when we're using language that isn't gender neutral. There are a few things that in ads for jobs, they found that women didn't like to apply for those jobs as much. One of the common terms being used today, at least in Silicon Valley, is if you're a ninja. And women really didn't apply for those jobs. I know that in the data field, the word that's being used is unicorn. Are you a unicorn? One of a kind is what it's supposed to mean, but as a very common term, it's not necessarily the one that women will apply for. They also don't necessarily like it if the ad says that this is a very competitive job. It's not that women don't want to compete, it's that they feel that given the small numbers, that that's a problem for them to be able to continue. And the other thing that really works is if you, prior to them coming to your institution, you have worked with the community to make sure that you're introducing young women and their families to the real possibilities of IT. So, getting into this discussion about what's worked or not worked in your institutions, at Capella, I actually went for a long time figuring that we weren't doing very well with women because I thought at 60% men, 70% men, it wasn't a very good number for women. And then I started discovering that in a lot of fields that we were working on, having 30% or more women in our courses was actually something that we indicated we were doing something right. I think one of the things that we've learned is that some of the women, especially women who've been perhaps in the field for a while but want to progress, online learning really allows them to participate without having to have good looks or feeling like they either look like a geek or that they have to look particularly appealing. They can just be who they are and do what they want to do in the privacy of their own home, and they don't have to worry about competing on that level. The discussions often don't really reveal very much about gender or anything else about you. You are just a voice in a discussion in an online world. The last thing is that the leadership of the school really reflects this emphasis on gender equality. I have 4 faculty chairs, 4 department heads who report to me, 2 are women, 2 are men, and I lead the school. We do try hard to make sure that there is a reflection of gender diversity. We also try hard to make sure that there's just diversity in general represented, and I have to say it's very difficult. It's hard to hire faculty who really represent that diversity and to find people to really work for us to represent that. And it's something we always have to keep in mind and think about. And that's hard to do when you also are just looking for quality and people who know how to teach and have some understanding of the field. So at this point, I really want to stop for a little bit and have a couple of discussions. One about, for some of you, after thinking about this, are there things that you know you're doing at your institutions that really have made a difference in attracting women, keeping women in the field? Are there things that you're actively doing that help you? I gave you a few minutes to think about it before this. Any ideas? I don't want to pick on you, but since you said you had 50% women, are there things that you think that you have actively done to get that many women into the field at your school? And I can run with one too, so.
I think being a woman has really, really helped. When I started, I had 22 males between my computer science program and my VGD program, and there was 1 female in my whole program. And now I had 50-50 this last semester and this last graduating class. And it's just been me going out to the local high schools and community and just saying, I can do it, you can do it too. It's a mindset set in our community. I think that women aren't good in math. It's a big thing that we've heard. It's one of our biggest downfalls in our schools, just the math scores. And once they see the math that they need to be in the field, they kind of back down because they don't believe they are strong enough in that area.
So you agree with me about trying to show that it isn't really all about mathematics and that
Yes.
you can do it even though that, I think a lot of people are logical even though they may not do well at math. Especially the way math may be taught today in some schools. Anybody else are there things that you have done? Okay.
I don't think I need a mic, but. Good morning. My name is Gus Pina. I'm from Doña Ana Community College. At our college, we have 2 computer clubs, predominantly made of our students. One is entitled Debug, which has been predominantly male. And my colleague has created a club, Women in Technology. And over the years, what we've been able to accomplish is removing the bridge between male and female. And so what used to be predominantly male in debug and vice versa, now there's a I guess more of a balance.
Right.
And so what the young ladies see or recognize is that faculty members, both male and female, work together to accomplish a goal. And by the females recognizing, or students, I should say, recognizing that, you know what, this is not a male-dominant industry, a lot of young ladies now come and ask about our programs and ask about joining these clubs. So then these clubs are clubs that students run or lead these projects, organize events, and one of our biggest success factors is a computer clinic that's mostly for the community. So it's kind of a hands-on type environment where we work on computers and fix computers. The students lead the club, the students organize the time and dates, and it's both men and women. The other benefit of this is that people from the community, both adult, young, and even high school students, recognize and see that, you know what, there's a team here. There's no longer just men versus women. It's men working with women, and then also how faculty get along. And so we've been very successful these last couple of years, changing the mindset. In our enrollment in the programs have increased. The young ladies are now interested in our programs.
That's good. Thank you. Sammy.
I teach for
It's on, Sam. He's turning it on.
I teach for Wayland Baptist University in Plainview, Texas, and I teach for the School of Business there. We've redefined and separated what IT actually means. Informational technology is a business concept. Instructional technology is a business concept. Instructional technology and information technology are two different things. And information technology actually belongs with computer science. Instructional technology is a business concept where we teach people how to go into corporate structures and actually teach the people there how to do what the corporate needs for them to do.
That is fascinating, because most of my education probably actually is on the instructional technology side, thinking about using the technology to teach others. I do think, though, it's interesting when you talk about IT, because I think IT itself is a better place, depending upon how you're labeled, maybe a better place for women to prosper. I think there's such a wide diversity of jobs in IT, and I think it's a failing of those of us in the industry that we don't talk about more of the jobs that are available. People don't really understand how many things you can do in IT that may not have anything to do with programming. So security is very different, databases are very different, data science, even networking, and there are an awful lot of things that I think are of interest, and people don't really know very much about those jobs. We've focused, I resent sometimes the amount of time that Silicon Valley has spent on coding. It's not that I think coding is bad, I just don't think it's really the only way for women to enter into IT, and it's become that way because they've created clubs for girls who code and all these other things. Seriously, the number of jobs that you can get into that really rely on coding is very small in comparison to the number of jobs that really rely more on problem solving. So, and the critical thinking that goes behind that and thinking through those. So.
Yes, I'm Bud Evans from Payson, Arizona High School, and one of the cool things about high school is that we have this organization called Future Business Leaders of America. And when I get the girls to take an active part in the leadership, and they're a great example for even when we go down to the 8th grade and do presentations or do open houses or have parents come, when they see young women up there presenting and going to nationals of competing, and it's a great motivating factor to bring more girls. I mean, I started out with 8 years ago, 1 girl in the whole program of 100. Now I've got maybe 30, so that's really great. At the college level, they can continue on. It's the organization's called Phi Beta Lambda, and if you have that in your college, then that will help the girls to have leadership. It's something they're familiar with if they've had it in the high school, and I've seen a lot of the girls that have graduated go on to college and then continue in the IT field with being in that organization.
Jack Young from Colorado Mesa University, also Western Colorado Community College, and Grand Valley BOCES, or Border Cooperative Education System. So I've heard everybody talking about what they're doing now. I want to talk about what we're doing to get the people to now. And one of the things is recruitment. And we do a thing called a drip factor, and that is we typically take a student that's out of K through 12 or a student that's out of college for that mentorship, a female that enjoys it, and then we hit every career fair or every school opportunity that we can in the Valley. We've went all the way down to talking to 4th graders, and I'm not much for kids. So, a 3-minute speech it becomes a lifetime when you have 4th graders out there. And then the next thing that we do is hands-on. We bring all parts of the computer systems. IT help have them build cables, have them network a computer just in that little half-hour time that we have so that they're interconnecting that and they're starting to get into it. Since I started doing this 6 years ago, we now are seeing those 6th graders and 4th graders coming into the high school program and then continuing on through the college program. So that recruitment, by doing that drip and keep hitting them all the time, giving them the ideas prior to 9th grade of a career field that they might be interested in.
And I think one of the interesting things is that since I'm old and have done this for a long time, in the 80s, we did a pretty strong push for having women use computers. And one of the things we saw is that there was a tremendous drop-off from 4th, 5th, and 6th graders to what girls would do in high school. And some of it is the environment that's created often in the computer labs. There's a lot of writing and research out there about the fact that we probably need to think even about the environment that we create in the labs that we set up. What kind of posters do you have up? What things might entice people? One of the slides that I didn't use this time, but I said, no more beer and pizza. That a lot of the fun times are centered around people having beer and pizza hackathon nights. That's great, and some women will love that, but there are other ways of enticing women to come in that may not have that kind of image behind it.
Yes, I'm Roger Gullidge from DeVry University. I work out of the Phoenix campus. And I agree that the socialization angle is probably the first ground to break. We have an event called Her World, which invites about 300 girls annually into our campus, and it's strictly an IT engineering-oriented kind of a thing. That's led, of course, by all of our female staff and instructors. It's also led by some of our advanced students. In fact, our IEEE student branch is led by 2 women in our programs. And also one of the 2 advisors, I'm the other one, but the other one is also my female colleague. So the visibility, the socialization, the keeping it in front of them, inviting them into your facility to see, reaching out. We also, of course, have online things too, and so we've actually opened up an IEEE branch online. So again, the goal is to try and make it as accessible and as painless and as easy and make it fun. Right.
And sometimes it doesn't necessarily have to be fun in the sense that, that it's rah-rah kind of fun. Sometimes it's challenging fun. So I think that, as I said, women are enticed. Many young women are enticed. One of the most, I think, thrilling things that I did in this last year, I attended the Women in Cybersecurity Conference. It's sponsored by the NSF, and young women in community colleges who were in the information assurance and security field could get scholarships to attend this conference. And I attended an event that was put on by Facebook. So some women from Facebook invited the women in to do a security kind of hackathon, except it was set up more as a game and a challenge. And fascinating to see a room of 60 young women all working together, all going at the challenge, all working hard. I also discovered that most young women use 2 devices. They not only use their laptops, they use their phones, and they can do it simultaneously, which I haven't figured out quite how to do yet, but it did tell me that you need to understand that it's a very mobile, multiple device world. So, but it was great to see a room of people who were that enthusiastic, and to see Facebook volunteers for that event who were all women from Facebook working in the field. Yep. So I want to go to one last point, and I don't mean to put pressure on our friends at TestOut, but part of what we need to do is to make sure that the technology that we're using and the labs that we're using also represent the women in IT. And so one of the questions is, since we're at a TestOut conference, are there things that you'd like to see TestOut do that could help us to entice more women into the field? Is there something that, as a company or with the labs that they present to us, is there something that needs to be done there? Go.
Though I've probably had more boys ask for this, just more girls in the videos, more faces to see. Just little things like that help, especially young people, identify as a possible future and see themselves there.
I did go through the website just a little bit to see what the representation is. It's actually fairly even, although some of the key ones at the top are all guys, I just want to point out, but it's not a criticism, because I know that there is a lot of attempt to get diversity, but.
James Major, Independence University, Associate Dean. One of the things I noticed about the lab sims, and by the way, awesome by the way, one of the things that some of my female classmate students say is there's no females teaching. There's none. That was an issue with them. Another thing is we do something in our classes as far as a group, and we'll set up teams of men and women. We started this a couple of years ago, and it's improved greatly. We've actually had more women want to come into IT because they're told that, you're in with a group. It's not just all women, all men, it's both. So we've raised our numbers pretty high in the past couple of years. I think it was, 10% women. We're up to almost 29, 30% women in the IT field as far as taking our classes.
One thing I do appreciate that TestOut is doing is the landing page where there's a picture and there's also a description there of the certifications, because that is kind of somewhat random. So when you log in, it can be both male or female, and our female students see that as a form as encouragement.
Right.
You mentioned your program is online. What do you do to recruit women then? What is she doing to recruit women into her online program?
It's a great question. Because at first I didn't think I was really doing anything, and so I was surprised to discover that we are at 30%. One of the things we're looking at doing, and should be able to come out shortly, I'm hoping, is that we will have special scholarships for women. We discovered that for women in the PhD field, it takes them a bit longer to finish, and our supposition is that it's because they find it difficult to support family and the degree program, and the cost of the program is sometimes problematic for that, so special discounts. You'll also find that the language of the advertising and the things that we do in our general television advertising tries to appeal to both women and men pretty equally. We talk a lot about the fact that you are solving problems and working on things to improve life or improve the world, and that language itself tends to recruit more women. I think also the fact that most of our recruiting is aimed at probably 26 and above. Our average age is 40 for most of our students, so it's aimed at people who maybe have already tried the field or have had a little bit of experience, and then we're trying to show them that they can participate equally. I think that it's mainly in language and the way we set up the courses that we try to appeal to women after we get them. And before we get them, it's really a lot about language and about the language that you talk about things in terms of what you're trying to accomplish.
We would like to thank Sue for her time, for her presentation.
Thank you very much.
We appreciate her making the effort to come, and I think Gregory wants to introduce something.
Hey, Sue, you did fantastic. And just so you know, we've been capturing your thoughts, already putting them into the LinkedIn discussion. Please go there. You can automatically already see Sue's presentation there. So again, if you haven't joined, join. In fact, we want to, not yet. Where's the click? Do you have the clicker? Thanks.
I'll pass it
We
over.
hear you loud and clear. I want to introduce something that has been in the works for a long time, but you'll start seeing it just next month in our very next product. I want to introduce you to the next round. Thank you. It's exciting. This is exciting for us. So this is Tracy. This is Katie. We've actually taken the Network Pro product and we've added Tracy, Katie, Spencer, and you know him, Rob Tracy. Yeah. Isn't that great? So we felt like, depending on what you guys would say, that it would be a perfect segue for introducing some new advancements. So it's fantastic. Just wanted to...
Those of you that have played with or used or piloted the TestOut Office Pro product, you'll note that we introduced a lot of diversity there in our instructors as well, and with Lizzie, and of course Spencer was one of the instructors as well, and other instructors that brought more diversity. Not that we don't all love Rob, for sure, there's no doubt about that. But we did bring some more diversity, and that was actually the first product where we introduced that a new paradigm, if you would, on the video instruction that was provided with the product. I just wanted to add that.
Thank you, Lad.
Jeff would have said that had he been closer to the front, right? Jeff, our product manager for that product.
I just want to say that I didn't set that up. I didn't
That's
know
correct.
that we were going to talk about
She
that.
was unaware of all of that. Real quickly, who in this room teaches a class that uses our TestOut Network Pro product? Quite a few. Okay, excellent. So this will be something you'll get. You'll have some other presentations about the Network Pro product and some advancements there. So again, let's give a round of applause for Sue.